Sound music.
Thanks for coming early today. 7 o'clock instead of 7:30. We want to mix it up.
We have a Disney holiday sing-along to watch at 8.
Me.
Maybe we've seen it already.
Oh,
yeah, you lucky.
stupid Central Time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, don't spoil anything for me.
I won't.
I don't want to know who performs until it happens.
Yeah, there's no way you could possibly know that.
Right. So
we're here as part of our LP Movie Club to discuss Disney Plus's original Black Beauty.
Is it fair to say Disney Pluses?
Disney Ply?
On a film on a film that they purchased and didn't make?
Well, it says Disney Plus Presents and it says Disney Plus Original.
Okay.
I wonder that all the time with Hulu movies as well. Like they've acquired distribution rights to something and they're like, it's a Hulu original. And I'm like, is it though?
We're looking at
I've given up and I just go with whatever they tell me now because it gets a little confusing. Like the Taylor Swift thing they did, it says Disney Plus Original on it, so it's canon.
Yeah.
I mean the Taylor Swift thing she did and then they put out.
Which I started quit asking Kyle questions about that. I'm like, did they go to her? Did she come to them? Was it like, hey, this thing is available, whoever wants to buy it? Like,
I wonder if
sorry,
like,
we're off track.
After her last Thanksgiving special, she's like went back to ABC and they're like, oh, Disney Plus is here because like the publicist was from ABC, and so I was like, maybe she thought it was going to go on ABC, but they convinced her that it would be better fit for Disney Plus.
Interesting. So the real reason we're here, Black Beauty, back on topic.
Way to shake it off, Alex.
I'm sorry. What did you guys think of Black Beauty? Let's start with you, Becca.
All right. I really liked it. I just finished watching it and I thought it was really good. I don't remember the original story and I don't really remember. I think it was the Warner Brothers movie. I know I've seen it, but it's been a long time. But I really liked this and I thought the modern update fit well.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because it's a contemporary take, but it doesn't feel modern. I mean, with the exception of I think like a few moments where there's people on cell phones, like they're not overdoing the fact that it takes place in the present day. It still feels like a timeless story, which I think is one of the film's biggest achievements. What about you, Benji? What did you think of Black Beauty?
This is my first sort of exposure to the story. They used to show the old Black Beauty on Disney Channel every once in a while. And, as a 10-year-old boy, the thought of watching a girl on a horse for 2 hours did not appeal to me. And
it was actually a boy and a horse, and you watched Mr. Ed.
No, okay, that's different because the horse talks. Like, all the promotion was talking about her writing. Wasn't it Elizabeth Taylor?
I don't know. No, I think you're thinking of National Velvet.
Oh, I am.
Yeah,
that is true.
I think.
Well, in any case, a movie about a horse who I just presumed that was all National Velvet, didn't appeal to me. But as I've grown older and I've actually ridden horses and appreciate them more than I had in the past, I actually really liked it. It was very thorough. I always presumed the story was actually about the girl because, but it's actually about the horse. And I think that was well done. It was emotional at times, like a little too emotional. And I worried about the horse because, as anyone knows, I care more about animals than I do about people. And at times it was almost hard to get through because you're like, stop being mean to Black Beauty. But I'm glad I watched it. I'm glad I sat through it. I'm glad it's a Disney Plus original because there was no way I would have watched this movie if it wasn't a Disney Plus original. And I've had a string of great finds on Disney Plus just because I watched them because, it's Disney Plus. And I'm looking forward to seeing Safety.
And it was fitting that Disney Plus gave us Black Beauty on Black Friday, which I feel like not enough people noticed, but that's pretty smart of them.
Yeah, it was. I noticed that, and I was like, is it? Can I say that? Is it demeaning to horses to like bring it up? But I just decided to steer clear of it.
Yeah, so I had actually had exposure to the story before, and mine was first through the Warner Brothers film that you mentioned, Becca, because I was a huge Free Willy fan, and so that just got me on this road of like I saw every animal movie that came to theaters, good or bad, and I remember being bored with Black Beauty because the '90s film adaptation was true to the book. Not that this version isn't, but that one was a period piece. Just felt a little slower paced and it kind of bored me. But the biggest takeaway that I got from it was I got to see a horse be born in it, and I found out that they're slimy when they're born. And that stayed with me, that visual. So before this version of Black Beauty, when I thought of Black Beauty, I thought of witnessing a horse's birth on the big screen, which scarred me forever. But one of the things that they did change, I mean, they gender flipped Black Beauty, they gender flipped Joe, so they made it more of a girl empowerment message in there somewhere. But what I think the biggest contribution that they made in terms of changing, not just updating the time and place, was making Beauty a wild horse. So in the book, in the other film version I saw, Beauty is born into a like breeding farm, essentially, and then ends up on this journey. It was still first person narrative, but I also really liked Kate Winslet's performance. I don't feel like you really get that it's Kate Winslet until the end if you haven't already known through the marketing, but I was really impressed with what she was able to do vocally, and I felt like the narrations didn't dominate the storytelling, but I really appreciated it coming from her point of view. Did you guys kind of pick up and get the sense of where this was all going from the beginning? Clouds is a film that like obviously tells you the ending from the start, but I feel like Black Beauty does it just in a more subtle way. Like if you really think about it, the way she's talking in the beginning is like from beyond, with a higher vantage point of everything that happened. Were you kind of prepared for the ending of Black Beauty when you started it? Did you feel like it set it up for you?
I was not paying that much attention. So you bring up a really, really great point, Alex. I wasn't catching on to that, but if I were to watch it again, I'm sure that I would have picked up more than a second viewing. But yeah, I think if you're looking for that, then yes, it does indeed set it up without being too spoilery.
But I kind of feel like because I was presuming it was about Mackenzie Foy, because that's what she can do publicity and she's the one doing all this stuff. I felt like I was sort of prejudiced to not thinking it was going to be that story. Like I thought Black Beauty might pass away, but I didn't think that sort of second third of it was going to be the way it was. So, because in the end, I would say, they do bring it up at the end, but it sort of ends with her happily ever after. And then they just tag it on of like, and then and then I live the rest of my days, but, kind of like a Christmas Carol, but it's not really a moment in the film as much as just sort of a epilogue.
Yeah. Was there a performance, animal or human, in the film that most impacted your viewing experience in this film?
I really liked Mackenzie Foy. I've not seen Nutcracker and the Four Realms, but I thought she did a really, really good job, and she had this this gentleness to her, and I appreciated both her interactions with animals or with the horses, and then with other humans too. I thought she was a very interesting character.
Yeah, it was quite a different performance for her from Nutcracker. In Nutcracker, she plays, I think, younger than she was. In Black Beauty, we not only see her play closer to her real age, but then go on and play older. You know, she plays Joe like possibly 10 years in the future. You know, it seems like she ages quite a bit when you reconnect with her at the end. So I was impressed with her as well. Were there any performances that stuck out to you, Mr. Fancy Hat?
I want to know why Nick is mocking the way I'm wearing my hat. I'm not like, I don't know if I'm supposed to fold my, now I'm self-conscious.
You're good.
I think the horse's performance was strong. I mean, not just Kate Winslet, but just, you know, the way the horse looked at you, you know, it matched. And I don't know how you do that. I mean, it's one thing for a dog where, you know, you can really see into a soul, but a horse to train acting is just got to be, you know, I mean, it's probably not actually the horse's performance, probably the way they shot it and, you know, how they edited it. But in the end, the performance comes across as strong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that's not, I saw it.
I think the answer to here is obviously the Nutcracker.
Yeah, obviously Nutcracker, especially because it's been on Netflix for like a year and it's about to come to Disney Plus, and then everyone will have seen it. And then the question of whether or not the Nutcracker and the Four Realms exist can no longer be denied.
Way to bring in the sci-fi dine-in reference.
Yeah, I also really loved the uncle. You know, I thought that dynamic was really great. I was really, the film, it doesn't hit you over the head with it, but it has a animal rights message. And I thought his whole approach to horse training was very powerful. You know, you never saw him with a whip, and then they juxtapose that later when they go to the very fancy people's ranch, people who would wear the hat that Benji's wearing today. And you know, it was a nice juxtaposition between his approach and their approach. And then I also thought it was cool the way they added in, rather than breaking a horse, partnering a horse.
Yes,
I thought that was a really sweet moment that really made this adaptation unique for me.
What I liked about the uncle was this, you kind of expect, okay, he's going to be this kind of stern uncle, you know, kind of not in touch with his emotions, and then he'll loosen up, you know, through the magic of his niece and beauty. But you know, they get it out of the way right away when you see him crying when he finds out his brother or sister passed away, and you know, so you know he's already emotional, as opposed to having to go through that trope of, okay, here's this cowboy, and then, you know, something happens, this girl comes. Like, it took that whole story off the table, which allowed you to focus on, you know, the relationship between Joe and Beauty, with him playing the, you know, the sort of, like, you know, I don't know, call it Yoda or whatever, but
yeah,
I thought that was a good touch.
It was sweet the way they developed their relationship from nothing into almost like a mentor-mentee rather than parent-child, you know, because her character was resistant to having that type of a figure in her life at that moment. But yeah, I thought that was a really interesting approach. I'm curious to know, since, you know, this is now the second fairly large film that came to Disney Plus that might not have been in Disney's sphere if it hadn't been for their streaming service. What kind of life do you think this adaptation of Black Beauty would have had were Disney Plus not an option?
I think it would have ended up on a Netflix or Freeform or Disney Channel, and no one would have noticed. I think, you know, I think these, just like Clouds, I feel like streaming, maybe not Disney Plus, but I think these two movies are, you know, suited really well for Disney Plus. But I feel like these kinds of small movies, if it went to theaters, literally no one would have noticed. And, you know, it could have ended up on basic cable or, you know, Hallmark or something, but then it'll just be another one in the run. Whereas, you know, what I like about Disney Plus, and I don't know what's going to change, you know, come December 10th, is that everything there gets its moment in the sun. You know, it's got enough that there's something every week to watch, but it's not kind of like Netflix, where there's like something new, it's there for a week and then it gets replaced by something else.
I got an email from them today saying there's 75 new things. Like,
yeah, and I mean,
due to
they're a
the
general
service you need
entertainment
to watch.
service.
And I'm like, I can't even find the time to watch The Crown. Like,
Right.
give me some time.
But I feel like, there, especially for a service like Disney Plus, where there's like a target kind of family audience, and you don't need to have 5 new kids shows and 12 adult dramas and all that stuff. It's just better this way, especially. I mean, not to get on my high horse again, but like with Mandalorian releasing week by week, I see. Yeah, it's all themed. There's always like every Friday there's something to wake up to without it being overwhelming. Like I can literally watch everything on Disney Plus, where there's no way I could do that with Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is definitely a movie that like my parents were very careful about what we were allowed to watch growing up. This was something that you really don't need to preview. You don't need to make sure that anything, is clean or there's no inappropriate language. And I do appreciate watching movies like this sometimes where, it's just completely wholesome. And yes, some more mature themes, but nothing that it doesn't feel super clean or sanitized, if that makes sense, but it's completely wholesome and something that the whole family can enjoy.
Well, and I feel like with streaming, there's this effort to get gritty, like just in general with entertainment. And there's a place for that. And streaming allows you to do things you wouldn't do on network television. That's great. But sometimes you just want to watch something like this. And I mean, and to Netflix's credit, they have some sort of what I would call frivolous holiday movies, which is exactly what you want a holiday movie to be. You don't want it to be a dour drama about, how miserable everyone's life is, especially during these challenging times. So it's nice.
Princess Switch Part 2.
Even Clouds, which is, obviously a downer, but still uplifting at the same time.
Yes, that was good. I was sobbing by the end of that. Oh my gosh.
And what's going to happen too, which is why it's like impressive.
That's such an ugly cry movie.
Oh yes. I was even telling Kyle about some of the scenes in there, and he's like, "Are you crying as you're telling me this?" I'm like, "It was just so good. It's so sad."
On Black Beauty, another thing that I really loved was how they approached the cinematography, and I picked up on that when Black Beauty first gets in her pen at the new ranch. Well, even at the other ranch, everything was cloudy. At the new ranch, it's like overwhelmingly bright. Like the sun is just so harsh coming in, even though she has trees coming in through the trees. And like all of the shots from her vantage point are kind of obscured until she warms up to Joe. And then all of a sudden everything like feels much more open. There were so many creative choices like that in the film that I found very powerful and really heightened and elevated the viewing experience. Was there anything else that you guys noticed or are discovering now, looking back and reflecting on it, that you think they did kind of exceptionally well with this film?
Well, to me, I'm just impressed for a movie that was kind of made without a distribution platform, that they were able to do things like lighting and cinematography to the level that they did. Even just the diversity in horses and the set, you go from, a stable is a stable, but they were able to make one look, worn but heartwarming. Then you had the sort of modern but cold, and then you had the sort of completely decrepit. And that's important in the storytelling. And for a movie that I would have, we as we said, we had no idea where this movie was going to land. I think that's impressive that they were able to focus on the detail on what I'm guessing is, not a huge budget. Sometimes you have to sacrifice artistry for efficiency. I mean, just like anybody. And I was impressed that they were able to get such strong movie making skills, I guess, in a movie that, was basically for sale.
What about you, Becca?
Yeah, I'm trying to think what really stood out to me as far as visually. Well, like Ben was saying, with just as part of the storytelling, just some of the different scenes or the contrast between the different stables and pens that she was in, but also that whole beach, like the first time they're on the beach. I mean, that's amazing that they, that they were able to shoot that, and it was very beautiful. Um,
Yeah, and I loved the beach as kind of the metaphor. It was really the imagery of like the in between,
mhm.
having that border of land to sea almost represent the border of life to afterlife. In terms of like going through the production notes, I noticed a lot of the film, some of it was shot domestically, a lot of it was filmed in South Africa. And
Mhm.
if you look at like the casting, it's like the US cast and then a UK cast. And so I'm guessing they achieved a lot of the shots that they did by going somewhere where it wasn't as expensive to film. And then South Africa, you've got the coastline right there. You've got a lot of
Mhm.
diversity of geography to play with to probably tell that story of like, oh, they went from Arizona to New York, upstate
Right.
New York to New York City. So it seems like they really kind of played with that. But they did a really great job of making it look like Arizona, New York, and New York City. And I'm not convinced that they didn't shoot some in New York City because, like, some of those Central Park shots look so Central Park. Like, I can't imagine that's another park anywhere else.
But Ashley here says she loved the movie. She's glad that they didn't show Ginger fully dead, which is, I agree, it's a little too much.
Yeah.
When that
um,
scene came on, I remember seeing it in the Warner Brothers film, and I'm like, I remembered Ginger and I remembered Mary Legs, and that's about all I remember of that version of Black Beauty. But then, yes, when they showed that scene, I was like, oh yes, I know I've seen this in much more detail
Mhm.
in another movie.
Yeah, they tell you everything without having to see
Well,
the
and that was
yeah.
something I liked about or Beauty's narration as well, was even kind of like cluing you in that she's going to be mistreated without, so it wasn't like such a shock. And she was like, I wanted Joe to be, like, I wanted to please Joe and I wanted to make her proud of me, but the way this person was treating me, and it kind of like, you knew something terrible was coming, but it softened that blow a little bit, and I appreciated that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and in the end, you're able to see her. I mean, age, but at the same time, find happiness and peace, which is, I mean, we can all suffer trials and tribulations, but as long as you have, you come out okay in the end, then not that it's okay what happened to you, but
Right.
at least, you can be comforted in the fact that it all worked out. And
Well, what's kind of funny is the full name of the book. So it became just kind of colloquially known as Black Beauty, and most book covers just gave it that title. But if you actually get the full book, on the opening page, it has a longer title. It's Black Beauty, His Grooms and Companions: The Autobiography of a Horse. And it's almost like the life and times of the horse. And really, she does in the movie go through different lives after Joe and before she gets back to her, one of which makes her a hero. Like, she almost loses her life saving people, and I think it's supposed to be the Colorado Rockies. And I almost would have liked to have had more of that, because I felt like her handler in those moments was a really interesting character, and you only really got about like 10 minutes of time with him. But I thought that was a really interesting segment where it's like she goes from, having this perfect life with Joe to being a hero, and then, really downhill, 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 and then happy ending.
Yeah.
yeah, that part kind of reminded me of like A Dog's Purpose, where it was like there was like the main life and then just sort of additional lives, and then kind of came to fruition in the end, except without having to pass away, which is good because that movie wrecked me. But yeah, it's funny because I think that Life of Times of a Horse is like a much better name, at least in conveying what this book is about. but obviously not as marketable.
Yeah, what's kind of interesting too, just on like the legacy of the book by Anna Sewell, she was fairly elderly when she wrote it, and she got to live long enough to see it become a successful book, but she didn't live long enough to see kind of reform for the original books took place in England, reform for like the number of hours a horse could work carrying carriages, which was part of the mistreatment of Beauty in the book was, being forced to work these grueling hours as basically a car, taking people by carriage because it was pre-automobile times. Here they adapted that with, New York tourism.
Mhm.
So anything else anyone's got to add? Final thoughts on Black Beauty?
I agree with Becca. I loved the film. I thought it was, it was better than I expected it to be. I thought it was just about as perfect of a contemporary telling as they could do, while still remaining very faithful to the original story and the main beats and messages of it. And I found it to actually be a fairly spiritual experience, which I didn't really expect from Black Beauty.
It was it reminded me of being a young girl and wanting to have horses for a little. There's that little part of me that there as a
Everyone
preteen.
has that My Little Pony phase.
And so watching this was like, oh, I remember what it was like to want to have a horse and to want to, just be able to ride. And so that was kind of a fun, positive, like, nostalgic moment for me just throughout this film.
Yeah, I agree. It almost has a nostalgic feeling, really does feel timeless, despite obviously being set in the now.
So that's Black Beauty. Next week we'll be back at a special time as well, 8:00 Pacific time, to discuss the Disney Plus original from the Walt Disney Studios. This one they made, lock, stock, and barrel, Godmothered, which I don't think you can talk about yet, Alex, right?
Not until Wednesday. Today, if you go on laughingplace.com, I was able to publish a piece about the behind the scenes. And then sorry for the dog barking. And then on Wednesday, you'll be able to read my review, and we'll have a video review on our YouTube as well.
So we'll be back. So watch Godmothered before next Monday, and we'll be back here to talk about that movie and get in a little bit of the holiday spirit, this is 3 Disney Plus original movies we're doing back to back to back. We'll have Black Beauty, then Godmothered, and then Safety, also from Walt Disney Studios. So we'd love to hear your thoughts. So screen that movie starting Friday, and we'll be back here Monday at 8:00 Pacific to discuss Godmothered. Thanks for joining us. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.